Yes, folks, it is Super Tuesday here in North Carolina, but also in other places as well. As a matter of fact, it's Super Tuesday where Rick Rosner is as well in California. And there are key primary races in California and North Carolina, which will definitely be, folks will be following on Super Tuesday. And definitely it looks like folks are saying that Super Tuesday may give Trump the knockout blow that he needs in order for us to head into this Trump and Biden rematch. It looks like it is almost certainly to happen and all in that way. But definitely, there is some speculation that Haley may drop out, but I've also heard some speculation that Haley may be looking at the no labels folks as a potential way to still stay in the race as a third party candidate, even though she has definitely denied that and all along those lines. And of course, people are still talking about the Trump victory in the Supreme Court. So that is something that folks have got on their mind. But apparently, Amy Coney Barrett disagreed with the majority over Trump. But apparently, from what I'm reading, she admonished the liberals instead. And George Conway says he can't make heads or tails out of the Trump Supreme Court ballot opinion. So definitely, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that kind of framework and what goes on in that way. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on because apparently even Tubin was saying that on the Trump Supreme Court win, there were some pissed off justices. So definitely some interesting words being said about what's going on in that space. And of course, Trump go defended in the other case, because he's got several cases going on, are seeking to add testimony in an effort to disqualify Fannie Willis. So lawyers are offering new witnesses in an effort to disqualify Trump prosecutors in Georgia. So Cobb County prosecutor alleges Fannie Willis warned Bradley they're coming after us. So definitely folks are looking at that as well. So a number of things are going on in this situation with Trump and all along those lines. But the Supreme Court had another ruling that might surprise some folks. The Supreme Court says stays the Texas law that allows police to arrest and detain illegal migrants. So they have temporarily blocked that controversial border law, SB 4. So definitely that is the law that was allowing police to arrest migrants. And they have put a pause on that. So Supreme Court's Alito has paused that law, at least for now. But we'll see whether that is the case or remains the case or what goes on in that way. And you hear me talking about Kamala Harris, who was in Durham last week, but apparently Kamala Harris is denying NBC reports that the White House prevented her from criticizing Israel too harshly. So apparently, some folks are saying that it was a watered down Kamala Harris Gaza speech, and there are, I guess, some folks that are wondering whether she was told to tone it down and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. And by the way, I know I was talking about this on one of our other shows recently. There are some reports of definitely there being some deep fake items out there, including some that are targeting the African American community as well. So some of these things that you are seeing that are endorsements might not actually be real endorsements. They might be deep fakes that are being created by AI and things in that way. So I know we were talking about that. I believe that was on the All Around show on yesterday on Monday. But court records from Trump attorneys Tropis and Cheesebro revealed the depths of the fake elector scheme. So, Wisconsin fake elector settlement offers new details on the strategy by Trump. So, apparently, there is some notion of there being some of these things going on as well. And apparently, there are still people talking about the Alabama IVF bill, which doesn't ease legal risk after the court ruling, according to some of the experts. So, House GOP is navigating the IVF backlash by offering symbolic measures with no force of law. So, definitely, Alabama lawmakers are aiming to approve immunity laws for IVF providers. So, that is something else that we are seeing in the news as well. So, like I said, there is a lot of things going on. And speaking of a lot of things going on, I know that way back when I used to go down to South Beach for a very popular film festival that is still in action, the American Black Film Festival, which I think is held around July. But we know that right now is a time that a lot of the college kids head down in that area because apparently this Miami Beach is breaking up with spring break, or at least trying to, because that was a popular place that folks would go. And this popular spring break destination doesn't want any tourists visiting in 2024. So the Florida Spring Break 2024 brings the Miami curfew as others embrace the party. So Fort Lauderdale is bracing for wild spring break with free roofie drink tests and DUI alternatives. So definitely will be interested to see what folks have to say about that. And apparently Florida is in the news for some of the things going on around the whole notion of being woke and all along those lines. So definitely be interested to see what's going on in Florida and what folks have to say about that. But the Florida Stop Woke Act, some people, according to the appeal court, commits a First Amendment sin. And this is a ruling that blocks a portion of the bill. So the appeals court denounced the Florida Stop Woke Act as a First Amendment sin. And definitely we'll see whether folks agree and whether it gets into the whole notion of the national discourse and the national conversation and all along those lines. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, including the fact that apparently there are California blizzards. So yeah, the California snowstorm, and definitely they're saying that a snow town's got a weekend blizzard. So California is bracing for power outages as winter weather alert is issued. So I don't oftentimes think of California as being a wintry place, but I do know they've got mountains in California and in Nevada and all in that place. But yeah, the California snowpack surged after huge storms, and the California blizzard hit the Sierra Nevada mountains and closes key highways. So I don't know if there was any hope that Rick was going into that general area or had any plans to go into that general area and all in that way. So I'm going to bring him up and bring up Nick and see who else is in the room with us and see what they've got to say about a number of these things as well. So it's always fascinating the things that are going on. And like I said, it is Super Tuesday, and folks are speculating that this could be the end of Nikki Haley's campaign and all in that way. But like I said, going to bring in some of my fellow panelists and see what their thoughts are about some of the things that I brought up and all in that way. So I've got Rick Rosner with me. I've also got Nick Palveda, one of the founders of the network, with me as well. And of course, I've got Jatovi, who looks like he's on the road, and Sasha Starr
is always on the road
in the background and all in that way. So maybe he'll pop on. He might still be on his trip and everything, or maybe he's got back from Canada. But the first thing I've got to ask, and I know it's a lighter story, but we can get to some of the heavy ones later. Rick, did you ever go, and were you an active spring breaker? I never made it to Miami in my college years.
No, I worked in bars, and that was, enough partying for me.
He was on spring break all the time, Mark.
Right. And if you work in bars, you get paid to be in a bar instead of paying for it. And also you have one thing I didn't learn until much later, but I achieved by accident, is you don't want to be a guy alone in a bar. You look creepy. Everybody knows why you're there. But if you're working there, you're fine. You have a reason to be there that's non-creepy.
But at least if you're working there, you're making money. So,
right.
I mean, there's something good happening to you. If they're not working there, they're spending money, which is not a good thing happening to them. So you're on
along those same lines, Nick. Along those same lines, like I said, it has been a tradition for years, decades even. I remember watching Happy Days. They talk about going down to places like that way back in the 50s and the 40s, way before I was born and everything. But I just wondered your notion of, because apparently Florida's in the news for two reasons. One, that whole anti-woke bill that apparently has been shot down, but also this notion of you had all this money coming into your community because namely students were flocking there, and maybe they were being disruptive. And I know that used to be the case with even I think it's Myrtle Beach that kind of curtailed some of the bikers coming down and everything. But I was wondering, everybody on the panels, y'all's thoughts, because in my mind, that's some serious revenue that's being lost if you're thinking that you don't want the students down there when they're probably spending all kinds of money on bars and other things. But Jatovi, any thoughts, or anybody else?
He's driving Uber. So the thing is, he's making money. He's smart. We're just talking. But, What?
I wish I was making money.
Yeah,
but
I mean, that's the name of the game. But I'll tell you, it really depends when they're doing the spring break. January, February, and March, they got so many Yankee snowbirds coming down there, driving up prices. They don't care about the students. Matter of fact, they don't even want them. But now when you get into April, May, June, as things get warmer, the snowbirds leave, and then they want the spring breakers there. So it depends on when. Spring break now is incredibly stupid. It's, first of all, it's winter. And second of all, it always got me because to me, college was easy. Last thing in the world, you need a break. Oh, how hard it was to go to school. You know, if they need a break for that, they're going to have a hard time with the rest of their lives. So really, it's just an excuse to go party. And
what's your take on that, Jacoby? This notion of Florida kind of curtailing the students from spring break?
I mean, it's spring break is no more than a glorified tourist occasion. So that hurts the tourism market. So that hurts a lot of money coming into Florida. I mean, I don't know how they want to regulate it, if they want to try and still include the students to come down. I disagree with Nick that okay, you don't need spring break. I think you do need spring break. I mean, college is tough, and you have schools that have spring break. I mean, it's a normal thing even for K through 12 schools. You have spring break, but I mean, it's just it's a big tourist attraction. I mean, it's a big So
you should work 24/7 in the United States. Just get over it. You know,
that's really going to work.
Stop all these holidays. I got a holiday for President's Day. I got a holiday for this. I got a holiday for that. They all want to get paid for not working. You know, slackers is what I say they are.
Spring break is a little obsolete. It's about getting laid. It's about, for guys at least, they go down there hoping to meet some drunk girl from SUNY Syracuse, and but
that's true.
The times have moved on. Like when I worked in bars, that bars were where you went hoping to hook up with somebody. And now it's all online. You don't need to go to a bar. You don't need to go to spring break. You can do
the internet.
You can do Tinder or Grindr, depending.
We're in that elderly stage where we're saying, hey, we're old fuddy-duddies, and those young whippersnappers should not be doing that. That's basically correct. Our whole thing that we're saying right now.
You got it, Jacoby. There's nothing.
Well, speaking of that and everything, and still staying in Florida, I've oftentimes tried to figure out this whole conversation around the woke, but apparently there's an anti-woke bill out of Florida, but it has been shot down by the appeals court. And I'm going like, well, first off, don't everybody want to be awake? I would think you would want to be awake.
No, they don't.
There's this whole notion of being anti-woke and everything.
You know, critical race theory, they don't even know what it is down there. Come on. You know, and so you're trying to install something and something they don't understand. Diversity, equity, inclusion. That ain't words for Florida. They don't understand that stuff. So they said, eradicate it. And the University of Florida tossed out their DEI program. So it's no longer at the University of Florida. I have no idea what Miami's doing. But I'll tell you, when I went to the U, baby, the U, that is a very diverse school, baby. The U, okay? So, I mean, they have students from all over the bloody world are at the U. So this is a very superior school to go to anyway. Do not go to the University of Florida. Do not go to the University of South Florida. If you can get in, go to the U, baby, the U.
So I don't care your school and everything, but by the way, let me just give you a little bit of background.
You have to go to the University of Florida. University of Florida sucks. Go to the U.
But I hear you being biased and everything, and people can be biased. I can be biased in Marquette versus Notre Dame and everything else.
No, it's not biased. It's facts. I've listened to Jacoby for a long time. I am not biased. I just deliver facts. The facts is the U is diversified. University of Florida is a bloody redneck school. Don't go there. Stay away from the U. University of Florida. Go to the University of Miami, a real university where you actually have DEI. They don't need a DEI coordinator because they're an international school. Go on, Rick.
So, I mean, the more people learned about Governor Ron DeSantis, the less they liked him.
He's an idiot. What do you mean don't like him? Actually, he's really smart. Intellectually, he's done really well in law and all that other stuff. But other than that, he's an idiot. what it shows to me is how smart people can do stupid things. And it just boggles my mind. And some of it he's doing is just because he's trying to capture the stupid conservatives that I grew up with in Florida, which predominantly are the Florida natives, believe it or not. And that's what he's doing, Rick. He's a political hack. And we're going to be talking about his hack. Who is it? His medical hack tomorrow on our Medicine and Science.
Ladopo, his Surgeon General, telling people.
Yeah, Surgeon General.
Telling people not to get vaccinated. Now they got measles popping up all over.
Yeah, he's got measles popping up all over the place. He doesn't know what the heck he's doing, and he's taking his orders from an attorney hack who's really a politician, otherwise known as Ron DeSantis.
But I mean, it kind of shows what happens. The MAGAs are around 40% at most of the population, and if you go after them, which DeSantis did by suing Disney and this woke stuff, you lose everybody else.
And by the way, that's what happened. Just to give some background, the Federal Appeals Court in Florida blocked the enforcement of employer provisions in a law state governor Ron DeSantis dubbed the Stop Woke Act in a unanimous ruling on Monday, and in upholding an earlier ruling, the 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, in an opinion, said the legislation exceeds the bounds of the First Amendment. It stems from a lawsuit filed by several Florida businesses challenging the act, also known as HB 7, which would prevent them from requiring workers to attend workplace training promoting diversity and inclusion. DeSantis administration officials argue that the law is designed to prevent indoctrination in workplaces and schools, and have indicated that they may appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court to challenge the decision. And if you want to go back, apparently honeymoon registry company Honey Fun, Ben & Jerry's ice cream franchise Primo, and workplace diversity consultancy Collective Concepts and its co-founder Chevra Oren apparently filed the suit originally back.
Right, you said we're old fuddy-duddies, and I remember when I was a kid, my parents and all the adults, they just wanted to send their kids to school and forget about it, and just they figured that school kind of had we'd get everybody would be fine, and with this anti-critical race theory and this anti-woke and banning, but most people don't want to get into hassles about that. They just want their kids to go to school and learn normal facts instead of fighting over shielding kids from uncomfortable facts.
The most interesting piece, though, I mean, yes, people just want to send their kids to school, but the problem is you have, again, the individuals like your Ron DeSantis that picked up, that is a political hack, like Nick says. He picked up, this crazy fear conspiracy based on the racist ideology of the white replacement syndrome, replacement theory, to all these other theories, and decided, hey, this is a great political talking point that I can run on. It's fear that I can scare people into, that these brown people are trying to teach my child to be racist, which it's not. Critical race theory isn't even taught in any K through 12 education system at all, but he actually passed, again, the bill that you're talking about. It was based on the fear that it was being taught to kindergartners, when it's a college class that's not even taught to every college student. It's an elective at mostly law. So, and then so he played off the fears and this racist ideology and the white replacement theories and all this other stuff to rile people up. And then on top of that, the anti-vax thing, you combine those two. So he's played into the whole anti-vax base, which is why you have measles, like Rick talked about, running rampant in Florida. Well, guess who's also picking up on those same exact talking points? The head of the Republican Party is already talking about he's going to take away funding from schools that actually tell people that they can't send their child to school if they're not vaccinated. It's something that we've done for decades, and now the anti-vax crowd, because it's a voting block, he's doing the same exact thing.
Speaking of which, Mark, make sure we have the Merck Manual on our bookstore. It's called the Merck Manual, MERCK. For those who haven't read the Merck Manual, I read it when I was like 3 years old. I've been reading it for decades because, my mom was head nurse at Tampa General Hospital. She did postgraduate work in New York at Bellevue Hospital. And so I had the Merck Manual laying around the house. And so you pick it up and you read it when you're a kid and you keep reading it. And then I just realized most people don't read the Merck Manual. They don't even know what it is. Right. If the anti-vaxxers don't know what the Merck Manual is, they need to never express an opinion about infectious diseases at all. They should just shut up, go in the corner, and listen to their personal doctor, not the idiot doctor who heads up the state of Florida, who lucky to be able to read, let alone that. Put it on our list because we're going to sell the Merck.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get the Merck Manual.
I don't have it anymore. I usust to have the older.
Speaking of that, because I want to get
hold on, one last thing. People have been getting vaccinated in America for almost 250 years. George Washington vaccinated his soldiers during the Revolutionary War against smallpox.
Yeah, and by the way, get the Merck Manual that costs $75 up there.
I'll get the more expensive version and everything. So we need people
the law books
buying
right
that
now,
the bigger
law
version.
Books here that cost like $1,000 a piece. You're used to spending money for books. You don't spend $20 or $30. You spend the one I saw on Amazon's like $75. But it's about 3,500 pages.
There's because getting back to the migrants, because I mentioned what's going on in Texas, but I definitely wanted to talk about another party, and it's not just the Democrats, but apparently the Republicans are. And that not just the Republicans, but the Democrats are sometimes upset as well because apparently Governor Kathy Hochul there in New York is set to announce a larger police presence in the subway system. So if you have any plans to go to New York, you might notice that there are more police officers in the subway. So I just wonder, is this an effective use of money and what our thoughts are? Because we do know that apparently somebody was saying that after there was that New York City subway attack that folks are being fearful. A 64-year-old man was kicked onto a New York subway track in Penn Station attack, and definitely the wife is saying that she fears very scary people as the man recovers from his New York City subway attack. And I don't know who did the attack, whether it was young folks or what their color, race, or anything about them was. But I just wanted our thoughts around this notion of a larger police presence in the New York City subways.
So I lived in New York City for a while, and one of my friends was caught for turnstile jumping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but the deal is, like, what I found, and like for the most part, New York City, I believe, has 4 times as many cops per capita as LA.
Yeah,
which means that New York cops are, in my experience, more chill than LA cops. LA cops feel like they're under siege all the time, and they're very cop-like. And in my experience, like New York cops, they're not in cars. They're walking around. They're walking beats. They're on the street. They're interacting directly with people, and with enough cops to handle things. I find that the average cop, and I don't know because I didn't live there that long, a few years, is less of an a-hole in New York than the cops in LA.
Yeah. I was there a couple of weeks ago, but, in New York, I've been going, I worked there for 5 years, actually. I commuted from Boca into LaGuardia. So I'd spent a week or so in New York, then I'd fly back. I kept going back and forth like a crazy person. And then I had a house up in Greenwich. For the most part, New York today is a lot safer than it was back in the 70s and 80s when I worked there. And especially if you know where you're going. So if you're like in Midtown Manhattan, or you're up in the Upper East or Upper West Side in the subways, it's relatively safe. But I can't opine on the Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, because I don't go there. I've only been to Staten Island a couple times. It seems pretty safe. Same with Queens. Brooklyn, I heard, and Bronx have all changed. It's a pretty expensive place to live, but I would not be afraid.
It's not cheap at all, but in that same line, and I'm sure part of this had to do with the influx, or at least there might be some
You don't even
belief
see
that
them.
had to do with the influx of the migrants. As you heard
You
me
don't even
mention
see them.
earlier,
Mark. I
there
was
is
there
this
2 weeks ago.
notion of what's going on with Texas, because apparently Texas had this law that they're going to be able to arrest and detain illegal immigrants, but the Supreme Court has temporarily blocked that law. So,
I did see
Nick,
that.
you are a lawyer, so I just wanted your take on this
that's
notion.
pretty interesting. What they're saying is that, and this is similar to the Anderson Trump case, they're trying to put a line between what state and federal law does. If you're in the state, you got to stay in that lane. If you're a federal, stay in that lane. But here's the implication it has, because in states like Colorado, they have no law against smoking marijuana. In other words, you can do whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Because of state law. Federal law still has it as a crime. So the implication is that if you're a state law policeman or a state law sheriff or whatever, and you find somebody smoking, you can't arrest them. You just say, hey, have a good day. Well, you violated federal law, but frankly, I'm a state officer, so I don't give a rat's rear. So that's what they're saying. If that goes to the Supreme Court in a formal opinion, they're saying that if a state officer catches you violating a federal law, ignore it. So we'll see what implications that has. I'm look forward to the amicus briefs and the briefs on that particular case, because what they're saying is that if you're work for the state of Texas and immigration is federal, so if somebody broke a federal law, you just say, hey, too bad you broke a federal law. I'm not going to do jack because I work for the state of Texas. That's what they're saying, keeping everybody in their lane. Is it right or wrong? Doesn't matter. It is what it is. But I think it has implications as to other crimes that are out there that are federal. And if you're a state officer, a state police officer, you do one thing: ignore it.
So
I found that to be pretty
crime in general is a Republican selling point that we're awash in crime.
They're voting for a guy who's like indicted. What are they selling? The Donald, what are they going to sell him?
So,
see, this is why Nick Haley should actually stay in the race. He may actually lose that stupid case dealing with Stormy Daniels and then be a quote convicted felon. Are you put a convicted felon on the head of your ticket, Rick?
Well, the thing is, the GOP has always been the party of law and order. That's what they've sold for decades. And as Rick is talking about, they've sold the fact that they are tough on crime. This is all that crime, and that is their selling point. And the sad part is the stop and frisk was their selling point, and you saw the outcome of that. This show me your papers thing, which is now back in Texas, which is what you were talking about. The show me your papers is tough on crime. But again, what happens in reality is how it is the way that those end up being used in our society, because you don't, with stop and frisk, they stop minorities at least 10 times more than they stopped any white person. They found on minorities less contraband than they did on white people, but yet they attacked and over policed the minorities based on the stop and frisk law. The show me your papers thing, it attacked minorities. It went directly after any person who looked Hispanic and had them show me your papers. And if they did not have it or could not show it, they were reprimanded at that point. Not a Caucasian person, not a white person, anyone who looked Hispanic. And that's the same thing that's going on in Texas right now. And that's what happens in reality, in the real world, of these laws that those individuals are putting forth, especially when we're demonizing, they're invading. It's not an invasion. You have a mother with a child trying to escape a place. That's not an invasion. They're looking for help. So yeah, the laws themselves, the show me your papers thing that Texas is doing is going to be bad. Same way that they're trying to do it. And it's the GOP thing. It's what they push. It's a selling point.
So the most cops, like most people, are good people. But if you have institutional policies that make people aggressive, two things happened that made cops super shooty. Was 9/11 happened, and tens of billions of bucks became available to local police departments to become more like SWAT teams. They got all this war machinery to fight crime, and you give people a bunch of hammers, it turns everything into a nail. And so that happened in 2001 and after, and then in the 90s, the Democrats shifted to the right and started talking about super predators, which was the idea of that people are just like that there are all these super criminals and you have to throw them in jail, and that both these things led to militarized kind of police forces.
Hey, speaking of that, and speaking of one of our favorite people, actually, Nick had the pleasure yesterday of looking at some material, and I saw, because it came to how he was trying to appeal to the African American community, but a former analyst for us, and definitely, hopefully, he'll make a return trip. But I did see that David K. Johnson was talking about this sneaker ploy, which is actually how he described it and everything. And all along those lines, this notion of the Trump sneakers and this sneaker ploy to try to get the African American vote. So it was actually, I think, on MSNBC that I saw David, and we'll have to see if we can't get him back here because he used to give us some great commentary as well. But I just wanted our thoughts around this sneaker ploy, because apparently he's thinking that because we like sneakers, and apparently we also can relate to him, meaning African Americans and other minorities, because we've all had run-ins with the law, according to Trump and everything. But I just wanted folks' thoughts around this one sneaker ploy, because I did see a famous athlete. Hold on a second. A famous athlete. I think it was one of the Duke former players, but he is now retired, and he was talking about he didn't really see it either. It might have been Lou Williams or one of those athletes and everything. But definitely your thoughts around this sneaker ploy.
I think as soon as that came out, Jacoby was running to the store to go buy those golden sneakers, weren't you, Jacoby? You were like into it, huh?
Had to have me some Insurrectionist ones.
$400 for some sneakers that have what does have that spray paint of gold on it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah, and they're made in China.
Of course they're made.
If you order them, you get a disclaimer that says you may not get these until June, if at all.
Oh, really? If at all. So you may not get anything back. Those are called Trump sneakers.
This is where he's a great. I will give it that. This sales pitch, and he releases these sneakers, but one, he talks about the sneakers at that sneaker convention, got booed, but had some lady run up yelling, "Oh, he's a great man, and look at his family is religious," and all this dumb stuff. But then he goes to the Black Conservatives Conference, talks about the sneakers as well. But they never showed the actual Black conservators applauding for them. You hear it in the background, but they never showed the crowd. It was actually somebody who got a clip of the crowd when he's talking and showed the actual crowd. It was a bunch of white people at the Black Conservative Conference that were applauding it. Wow. So it really wasn't. He wasn't talking to black people, but he was definitely talking about black people. He's talking about how he could not see any white people in the room. He just sees the black ones.
He believes in DEI. What can I tell you?
It's hard to know what, like, one little thing will make people, suddenly drop a candidate. Like Dukakis was running strong in his election. I don't know, this is what, more than 30 years ago, and then he got in a tank, and the tank commander said, "You got to wear a helmet." And then the picture of him wearing a helmet, made him look stupid. He lost.
But I'm not sure with it, because Nick mentioned that. I think it was Nick that mentioned that something that took place recently will probably be made into a commercial, and a very scandalous commercial, and all along those lines. And was it really Willie Horton that hurt the caucus campaign? Because there was all this notion that you are going to let out a bunch of escaped convicts and all along those lines and everything. And it was
Willie Horton, and then in a debate. So Dukakis was anti-death penalty, and somebody in a debate asked him, "Well, what if somebody raped your wife?" And then he didn't come out and say, "Well, in that case, kill him." He equivocated, and that screwed up. Jimmy Carter had the craziest crap happen to him that eroded his support. He was in a rowboat, and he had his hand in the water, and a rabbit swum across the water and bit Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was in a race, a 5K. He had to drop out because of hemorrhoids. All these minor things, like, hurt him. Like, the ridiculous things have nothing to do with policy, but you never know what will. Gerald Ford at Saturday Night Live made fun of him having trouble with the steps coming in and out of Air Force One. Every president has had trouble, but he was the first one made fun of. That hurt him.
Yeah, Gary Hart also dropped out. When he had that fishing boat, Gary Hart, remember him?
Yeah,
the fishing boat, and it was the young lady Donna something.
So everything
things that drop out. Trump has a lot of big things. He's not dropping out. He's turning around and using it as an asset.
The thing is, Trump won't drop out, and he has everything that he does is baked in, and the big reason it's baked in is because the separation in our society right now is at that. I mean, we are so tribal that, for example, it doesn't matter what Joe Biden does, because right now, if you look on Fox News, they were upset at Joe Biden because he wanted a moonshot to cure cancer. On Fox News, they went after him saying, well, he only wants to do that because he can profit off of it. So it's not, we're at that point right now coming from the GOP. His stuff is baked in. A bunch of the MAGA wing, especially, the only reason, one of the big reasons that they love Trump is they make liberals mad. He makes liberals mad is the platform. And so it doesn't matter.
America,
yeah, so, and so it doesn't matter what Trump says. Trump has said racist stuff. Trump has said anti-Semitic stuff. Trump has, it doesn't matter. It's baked in, and they take it as a thing of pride that, he makes liberals mad, so that's why we want him.
There we go. There you go.
And wanting people back, we've got Sasha back from his vacation. He was over there in Aruba, and now I have my visa. But I do have a question for Sasha based on something that I was hearing. Definitely, and I know we're going to talk about Ukraine and everything, but there was some notion I mentioned yesterday and a couple of times that Kamala Harris was here in Durham, but apparently she made a trip to Selma, Alabama on Sunday, which has definitely got a lot of historical connections to the civil rights movement and everything. But there is some notion, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, that she was maybe told to tone down her criticism, because apparently she intended to criticize Israel more harshly in her speech on Sunday. But there is reports, including some coming from the Times of Israel, that the White House watered down her remarks about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So U.S. officials have said that the original language was strong but not controversial before the National Security Council edited the speech, and Harris spokeswomen have called the report inaccurate. But they said the vice president felt it was important to address the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza given recent developments, and to reiterate our administration's call on Hamas to accept the terms of the hostage deal. And apparently on Sunday, she called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe and implied strongly that Israel was imposing unnecessary restrictions on aid and even targeting convoys. And she called for a 6-week ceasefire. But I just wanted your notion, well, a couple of things. One, this notion that maybe her remarks were toned down and everything, because maybe the government and the Biden administration was feeling that she was being a little bit too strong in her criticism and everything. And also, should that be something that the White House should be doing with their vice president and all along those lines? And does she have the right to speak out on these issues if she's got harsh criticism? And this is for Sasha or anybody else that wants to jump into it.
Muted.
Sasha, we need to be able to hear you. You're muted. It's got Aruba sand.
He's looking. I don't hear. Oh, he might have to go out and in, because I'm not hearing him at all. And everything.
I'm not hearing him at all. I think he spent way too much time in Aruba. He's got a suntan going and everything. But
go back out and in, because I don't hear him at all. Yep,
he'd be our best commentator on this, because he keeps up with what's going on there. But there's a humanitarian issue that's taking place because of the people are pawns in this game, basically. And it's very unfortunate. Hamas used a bunch of pawns, which were people in Israel that were actually there celebrating peace. I mean, it was ridiculous. These are people that wanted peace, come together, and then they invaded Israel, and they took all these people as hostages. You know, I mean, that alone is horrible. And then, of course, Israel's response is they clobber Hamas, but then they take out a lot of civilians that have nothing to do with.
They've killed 30,000.
Getting sacrificed all the time.
They've killed about 1.5% of the population of Gaza now, 30,000 people, which pays the Gazans back 25-fold. The Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the thing is, all these people are pawns in the game. In other words, that's the sad part. They go to work, they do their jobs, they go back home. A lot of them are for go along, get along people. And then it's these power mongers who sit up front who make these decisions over these people's lives without their knowledge or consent. And see, that's the thing I object to, is that the pawns are getting sacrificed all the time, and for what reason?
Speaking of pawns, any thoughts around this notion of Kamala being told to tone down her remarks? So, you got any thoughts about this?
I mean, it is correct. I mean, it's sad, the situation, because not only the 30,000, those are just deaths, but then you're talking about everybody that are starving. I mean, you had 10 kids that starved the other day, and so you have starvation running rampant. You have a whole bunch, and I'm sure, Kamala was possibly told to tone it down, but we don't know how far she would have gone and how far she would have taken it. And on top of that, as irate that we can get on both sides of this situation on, hey, yes, Israel has an obligation to defend itself, but it also has to understand how that response, what goes on in that response. Hamas should, Hamas is a terrorist organization and, should be brought to justice. But we get so tied up in this. I want to be on this. I want to be on the Israeli side. I want to be on the side of the Palestinian people and the people of Gaza, that we forget that in that position of authority, especially being the president, because of the allies with Israel and the individuals in our country who are on the Israeli side, but yes, are heartbroken over the situation in Gaza, you cannot go so hard. You still got to be able to support Israel in some way because of its economic impact in that area and our partnerships in that area. But also, we have to understand the humanitarian side and focus on the people of Palestine and be able to protect them and give them the opportunities that they deserve. I mean, and that's why I think the position that's always been the U.S. position until Trump came in, it was the two-state solution where the people of Palestine were going to be able to have their own position of power and their position of their land. But that balancing act that you have to be able to not rile up one side or the other. So I can understand and see the point of trying not to go so hard against Israel into the point where you create a fissure in that relationship for the future, because those individuals you still have to deal with.
If you create that fissure, the U.S. has supported Israel for 76 years since Israel was created. And if you create that fissure, it doesn't stop Israel from doing anything. It just wrecks our leverage and our. But anyway, Sasha should say.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We can hear Sasha now. You got a tan.
I'm surprised about U.S. politics. Why they're so obsessed with this Gaza questions or so on. It's a humanitarian tragedy. There's no doubt about that. But so was humanitarian tragedy in Germany during the Second World War, Japan, 1945. And so Gaza is not any exception of the situation when the criminal state, the head of the state, which is of course Hamas, this horrible attack, and now there are the consequences. Okay, that's all what there is to it. Now, is Hamas supposed to participate in the negotiation table? Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not so sure because Hamas obviously still exists, although Israelis wanted to obliterate it once and for all, so it still exists. Now, does it today represent Palestinian people? Supposedly, yes. So now Palestinians are again okay. Maybe it doesn't represent that. Why Hamas should be at negotiation table if he doesn't represent Palestinian people? Then he should not be there. Then who should be there representing interests of Palestinian people? Qatar, maybe United States, Egypt. Like who? How?
Well,
So just to point out, Hamas has been in power ever since they seized power in 2005.
Okay.
There have not been any elections, so therefore other individuals cannot take power or remove them from power. So they do not represent the Palestinian people in that sense. And then on top of that, Hamas.
I'm just going to add to what Sasha said. There is also the other authority that apparently is in some state of disevil, because I think that there were some people that actually mass resigned or were let go of. So the Palestinian Authority, which is actually supposed to be the ones that are controlling more of the West Bank side, they seem to be in a state of disarray at least this particular point and everything.
Ramadan begins next Tuesday on the 10th,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some hope that well, not next Tuesday, anyway, in 5 days from now, Ramadan, and there's some hope that they can get a ceasefire then, at least for as long as Ramadan. Now, Netanyahu's a pretty bad guy, and he has some definitely bad guys in his cabinet. And as soon as the war is over, there's the Israelis are probably going to demand an election, which will knock him out of government and lead to legal consequences for him, because he's pretty much like Trump. He's kind of done a lot of not great stuff, but Netanyahu doesn't care if what Israel's actions do in the U.S. If it makes Biden look bad, Netanyahu's for that because Netanyahu wants Trump back in office.
Yeah, he's against. Netanyahu is against wholeheartedly. He and his cabinet, because he's hired some extremists in his cabinet, but they are definitely against the two-state solution. Just as they want all the land to be Israel's land and not having anything to do with the Palestinian people or having to do with the people of Gaza, which is actually a problem and which exacerbates the situation. Hence the reason he was actually paying Hamas, because Hamas also was against the two-state solution. So there's a lot of problems with the whole area, and it's just, we've got to understand that right now, if we can put the humans first rather than arguing back and forth about, oh, well, this and that and the other thing, there are 30,000 people that have died. There are many more that are on the precipice of dying. There is one, no, I think the last working hospital is no longer really working. They don't have the medical equipment to do surgeries. There was one where they showed that at one of the hospitals they were talking about, they don't have anesthesia to do surgeries on individuals that come in, so they leave them in the corner and let them die. I mean, think about that. So we cannot sit here. We have to understand, we've got to figure a way, yes, bring everybody to the table and work through the hostage situation. Hamas is an ideology. We have to end that ideology. However, you cannot end that ideology by trying to kill everybody. That doesn't work.
When you said to bring everybody at the table, that obviously includes Hamas. Hamas represents whom? We don't know.
Hamas has hostages. Hamas has to be at the table. They have hostages. So are you saying that we should just forget the hostages?
Hostages are dead. Forget about hostages. Most of them are already dead, and
that's the problem.
Soon. Okay, so forget about hostages. It's not the subject of any settlement negotiations, because
you tell the families that are struggling to have their individuals returned that forget about your family member. That's what you're telling those individuals.
Be responsible. They would release the hostages right away without any conditions. Okay, now we are talking about, so Hamas represented Palestinians. They release the hostages. alive. Okay, what do you want to tell me? Okay, tell us.
Sasha,
Now,
you're doing exactly what I just stated. You're not even listening to anything about the balancing act that must happen. You're saying that the individuals that are the hostages themselves and those families should just accept the fact that their family members are dead. We shouldn't even try and get those hostages out. That is what you're saying.
Of the hostages, there were some hostages released. There are several hostages that were already being killed. There are a few hostages that perhaps are alive, but there is not even the evidence of that because Hamas does not allow anybody there, so on. So let's assume that they are dead. If it's not,
no, let's not assume that.
No, it's great. If that's not right and they're alive, it's great. But let's assume that they are dead.
No, if you assume they're dead, then you're killing them by saying you don't negotiate to get them.
Most likely they are dead. Not 100%, but most likely. Okay.
You don't know.
Okay, let's not fight that over. Okay, they're either dead or alive. It doesn't matter. Okay.
We're talking about 130 hostages, and likely.
Doesn't matter. 500. 55,000
Again.
hostages. It's either there, some of them perhaps are still alive.
Doctor, again, you're messing up right now because you're saying that those individuals we should not care about.
Yeah, you're right.
We should not care about those individuals at all.
You're right. We care. Yes, hostages. Yeah, maybe they will be released one day. Let's not talk about it.
In practical terms, Netanyahu, the U.S. can't really hold Netanyahu accountable.
Okay, about Netanyahu, let me tell you about Netanyahu. He is a statesman. He is not a president or a leader. He is a statesman. He is a former paratrooper. He is a leader where Machiavelli says that the leader has to be either loved or feared. Netanyahu is a leader who prefers the second one. He wants to be feared. He doesn't care about
people don't want him there.
Okay, so he is being feared inside of Israel, but most likely outside of Israel. He is the real world stature leader. And
no, he is actually somebody who his own people don't want there. His people are trying to let him go because he does not represent their values.
Biden. So either Biden or Trump will be next president. But Americans don't want either. So what does it mean? It means nothing. Netanyahu, until losing election, and you know what? By the way, even if he lost election, there are still in Israel, you have to create a coalition government, and it's not very easy. There are just too many parties and fractions and so on. And I will not be surprised that Netanyahu could lose election and still become prime minister of Israel.
His people don't want him. The coalition don't want him. The actual polling, and that's what Rick pointed out, is the fact that the only reason he's still in power right now is because the war is happening. As soon as the war is done, the people want him gone. They've stated that.
We'll see that. A lot of people actually don't like him. I know that. But he is a leader who cares to be feared, not loved. And during the war, it works really well. When the war will be over, it will be a different situation. When it will be over, nobody knows. I suspect that war will be go on for a long, long time because
Netanyahu wants to stay in power.
Netanyahu wants the same thing what his general want. They all want to obliterate Hamas. That's all what they want, whether rightly or wrongly, but it doesn't matter. That's all what they want.
That's not what he stated.
Just really quickly, because we only got a few more minutes to go and everything. I know we got Ukraine, Russia, and China coming up in a few minutes and all along the lines. And by the way, Sasha and everybody else on the panel, I did see a friend of mine who ironically is a member of kind of leftist politics, but he is a Duke professor. So he is a anti-Zionist Jew, so I'll try to bring Rand Barr on at some point. He's actually a mathematician from Duke, but he might bring a different perspective and everything in this conversation. I think Jatovi knows him as well because he's been very much in the activist community and everything in that space. So we'll see if I can get him on at some point because I did run into him recently. But that being said, the question I had for everybody, which is unrelated and all along those lines, is as we're getting ready to wrap up this particular edition, is Nikki Haley after this particular Super Tuesday? And I did not do early voting, so I've got to go voting in an hour or so and all along those lines. But is after this election taking place, is Nikki Haley going to drop off, or is she going to run and under no labels or some other third party? What is our speculation as to the future of Nikki Haley? Because apparently she's not doing well in the states that she is running in this particular time. So any quick thoughts?
In the 4 states where there's been polling, Nikki Haley has outperformed what the polls say. So she'll probably outperform again today, but it may not stop Trump from getting enough delegates today to become the nominee. But she may hang in there for a while, because as long as people are willing to give her money to continue her campaign, she may continue it. I think there's a problem with her running third party. I think she said she won't do it. And then there are laws, sore loser laws, that say that if you ran as a major party candidate and lost, you can't run third party. Those laws haven't made it to the Supreme Court as to whether they're constitutional or not, but it's likely no, she won't. Once she quits running against Trump for the nomination, she probably won't go third party.
I think she's fighting to be vice president for Trump because she's very careful in her statements and so on. I'm pretty sure that's a nice career if she was ambassador in United Nations and vice president. That elevates her as a front runner for 2028 election.
What's your take, Jovi? Because I have heard some people say that she is trying to steer the parties to the center as opposed to the right where it is currently going and everything. But I just wanted your take on her future.
I mean, she's already said that she's not going to abide by the pledge, which I applaud her on that, but it's dumb because she took the pledge in the first place. So it's not like it changes much. But again, I think she's going to stay in the race, as she said, until Trump hits those numbers. Once he hits those numbers, then there's no reason for her to stay in the race. Today, she'll take a big loss, and then she'll come up with some other reason that she has to stick around. She'll point to the fact that Trump is still losing 40% of the Republican Party, or some percentage that he's losing. But then, she'll continue to stay in the race.
The smart thing would be for Trump to pick her up as VP, but Trump has a lifetime of not doing the smart thing.
Well, along those same lines, we still got another minute to go. Are we paying enough attention? Because we mentioned earlier the migrant issue, and if she is the VP, she would be the second VP of somewhat Asian descent and everything, because she also has some Indian background, just as Kamala Harris does and everything. Are we paying enough attention to the Asian vote? Because I know we're paying a lot of attention to the African-American vote and the Latin vote, but are we paying enough attention to the Asian vote in folks' opinion and everything, or is it being ignored?
It's demographics. The Asian people are what, 3%, less than that of the U.S. population. Like the Muslim vote and the Arab vote. Muslims are 1% of the U.S. population, but they are concentrated in swing states. So it makes sense to talk about their vote. I'm not sure it makes sense to talk about the Asian demographic, because they're not going to swing states one way or the other.
Interesting thought and everything. Like I said, I do know that they have some interesting contrast even on the international front. The
demographic that's important about Nikki Haley is she's a woman, and it may help the Republicans. Women are largely pissed off at the Republicans over abortion law and IVF and all that stuff. And having a woman on the ticket might help the Republicans hold on to more women.
Hear what y'all are saying. Well, this has been another lively discussion. We're going to pop off here and end this particular show and head over to Ukraine, Russia, and China. Hopefully we'll be seeing Ivan. I know we'll be seeing Sasha, and he'll be talking about not just that particular war and what's going on in that space, which we didn't get to that much here today and everything, but he'll also be talking about his trip to that lovely Caribbean island, because as Jacoby said, he just had that nice tan going on. So we'll get ready to bounce off and see what's going on, and maybe he'll share a little bit about that on the trip to the other show as well. But let's get ready to go to Ukraine, Russia, and China coming your way.
You'll meet at 5 o'clock today, yeah?
Yes, World Politics at 5 o'clock as well.
Thank you.